I just want to make this quick video before my phone powers off. So, as you may know, there was a lot of social conditioning specifically pushed on the Hebrew slave trade descendants and even kind of melanated people in general, but especially slave trade descendants, like way back when, even before the whole putting crack in black communities in the 80s, there was a lot of agendas pushed to get quote unquote black women into the white supremacist and even occultic feminist agenda. Because, of course, a lot of stuff with quote unquote white supremacy is rooted in the occult, but that's a whole nother topic. So they tried to drag quote unquote black women into the feminist agenda, get them to kick their men out the house for government assistance like food stamps and Section 8 and affordable housing. And something that I've noticed a long time ago is that, just ignored that, is that a lot of these, quote unquote, help programs are still pushed towards women. Specifically, women who are still caught up in the generational curses and social conditioning of running around having a whole bunch of kids. And of course, not everybody in these programs, like Section 8, is in that predicament, but it's geared towards those types of people and they get in easier. Which is why some people who get into Section 8 and other similar programs like that, who actually do have a husband or whatever, and they still have trouble affording the usual rent, will have to sneak in their husbands and stuff because these systems were put in place as another one of the multiple agendas to tear apart family systems. And of course, like I said before, everything that seems like it revolves around quote unquote white supremacy was really just, it was, wait a minute. How did I explain it the other time? Basically, white supremacy is just an agenda, social conditioning on quote unquote white people, even though the specific group of Europeans who really made these philosophies, a lot of them don't even like lower level Caucasian Europeans, but that's kind of another story too. And it's these agendas that were pushed revolving around racism were just there to, for one, set quote unquote white people up to have judgment that they're going to have to read, and two, to make quote unquote white people think that all these agendas were never going to be pushed on them while they're in agreement with it being pushed on other people. And so once the tables finally turned and these same anti-family agendas have been pushed on all groups of people, the quote unquote white people who are already in agreement with the whole tear the men out the home stuff. And hopefully that made sense. I feel like I explained it better the other time. So basically, white supremacy is just an agenda that was used to make quote unquote white people think that the agendas that they're allowing to be pushed on other people would never be pushed on them. And then that's what I had to say about that. Hopefully that made sense. But yeah, so this whole bias with quote unquote help programs, it even goes along with how it's easier for women to get into shelters than dudes, and there's also a lot of women's shelters and women domestic violence shelters, which of course they don't help the person actually get away from their abuser. The person has to save themselves, just like with the quote unquote anti-trafficking organizations. But yeah, still it's just the fact that the shelters are there, but there's really nothing for males. Like, I remember when I lived in the hood or whatever, there's like, well, not even just then. I'm trying to figure out how to like form this sentence without having too many Joe Biden moments. But it's like there's a lot of women who are falling into the generational curse cycle of having a whole bunch of kids. And of course, commonly, it starts off with somebody getting molested and then getting pregnant by somebody who's way too old for them. This happens with males and females, but of course, it's never really talked about with the males because they commonly don't even end up getting to keep their kid in situations like that because the laws are against men so much. So then the molester lady gets to run off with the kid too. But that's commonly like the breeding ground for a quote unquote narcissist or somebody with the Jezebel, Leviathan, and other marine spirits. First, they have an abusive, dysfunctional parent or family, and then they run off looking for love, and then they end up getting molested, and then they end up getting pregnant, or the molester gets pregnant, and then their abusive parents and family kick them to the curb for getting pregnant, and then that's the path to narcissism. And then these women commonly end up in Section 8. Not all the time, but commonly. And those are the type of women that I've seen a lot in the hood or whatever you want to call it. But it's like there's nothing like that for guys as far as Section 8. The dudes commonly just end up homeless because it's really hard for a male or really anybody that doesn't have a whole bunch of kids to even get Section 8. But then also on the West Coast, I've noticed that it's hard for somebody who's not like either really old or on drugs and sick because they're on drugs to get a voucher. And I've just been thinking about this because like people have their little comments that they make about homeless people and how they're quote unquote scraping up all the government assistance in Section 8, but that's bullcrap. Section 8 was specifically geared towards certain people, and it revolves around redlining and eugenics and all that stuff. It's really hard for people who the government assistance agenda wasn't pushed on to get into it. And hopefully this is making sense. Because something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, but it's like, honestly, if it wasn't for Section 8, my mom would honestly, she probably would have been homeless too. If it wasn't for Section 8 and the fact that, at one point, she was getting a check for me once I moved in her in the Munch house and Cash for Kids system abuse started, and also the fact that she had a whole bunch of kids. It's like, that being Section 8, that stuff really is geared towards certain people. And of course it is, because I mean, the whole government assistance agenda was pushed on certain people to tear down the family systems. That, the putting crack in black communities in the 80s agenda, and then the hijacking of hip hop and it being used for social conditioning and spell casting and all that. All those things go together. And regardless of what people say about what services homeless people are quote unquote scraping up, it's really only certain people that can even get into these programs. But yeah, then that's pretty much it.